In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
Can't wait till Jack gets here. Can't wait to show him what I got. Hot off the presses. Yeah, that's right. I know, I'm going to show it to him today. I know, I wore it. See? I've got it on. He hasn't gotten here yet, though.
All right.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'll see you later. Okay, bye. Hey,
hey,
what's this?
How are you?
Hey,
Good to see you, man.
Oh.
I'm so glad that you showed up today.
Yeah, of course. I wouldn't miss this.
Did you notice what I have on today?
I am noticing that. What is that?
Condition unknown.
That's the condition unknown swag.
Yeah, remember when I told you about the guy who's sitting up front and he always has the little notepad and he's always like doodling, and well, he hooked me up with his people and I was able to get the condition unknown hoodie. And I am told that ordering window stickers, condition unknown, is easy to do. So, yeah.
All right. Is this a prototype hoodie? Is this the first one?
Yeah, it's the only one.
Only one.
Yeah, because his people are so good that you don't even have to buy them in like increments of 5. You can just get like one personalized hoodie or coffee mug. Or remember in the old days when you had to order like 12 of them?
Yeah.
There was like a minimum.
Make it worth their while.
Yeah.
Right.
Not anymore. With the help of AI and with all these, third world countries that we're sourcing our goods from, you can actually, you can get one of anything. You could probably even get one condition unknown water bottle that you're drinking out of.
Nice. What was the tariff on that sweatshirt?
It's a little steep. I actually had to pay I think they said it was like 3,000%, which actually came out to be like $20. So it's not the highest quality and it's probably going to really shrink. So this is probably the last time I can ever wear it, but,
line dry it. Don't put it in the dryer.
Yeah, for sure. Neil up there in the front with the little notebook. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm showing it to him. Yep. He likes it.
I see it.
He likes it. He likes it.
Oh, you.
Yeah.
So that would be my official walk-in clinic shirt as well. I'd throw that on anytime that I needed to get any medical care at all, just condition unknown. And then when the doctor came in and said, all right, Mr. Hansen, we're going to need you to take your sweatshirt off. I'm like, no. It's the fucking sweatshirt stays on. You can do whatever you need to do under the shirt. This stays on the whole time. I want everyone to know condition unknown because you don't know what it is.
Yeah, see, it's a great icebreaker and a condition unknown in a store near you. But right now it's limited edition, so I kind of feel like it's special.
That'd be like a great Crossroads sweatshirt if you were dating, especially
totally.
I'm not into the online dating thing as we've talked about, but if I were,
well,
I'd
you're
want
a taken man
unknown
at the moment.
Hoodie. Well, yeah, but meeting people inorganically is weird to me. But I would wear that. Like if I was speed dating or if I'd been set up or just anything, just any circumstances where I didn't know the person in advance or didn't know them too well, I would show up wearing the condition unknown sweatshirt and then just use it for whatever capacity I needed to. If the chick's a little bit of a rocker. She's got an edge. She's showing some tattoos, and she orders like orange peels or a lemon wedge with her smoothie or whatever. And
or
you're
a
thinking,
cucumber
okay,
and water.
So you just say, and she's just like, condition unknown. So like, what's that? And I'm like, it's my band. Yeah, it's totally my band. So like, they're not actually a band. Like, we're disbanded at the moment, but it could so be a band.
You kind of sound like Robert. You kind of sound like Robert. Remember Robert?
Robert.
Yeah, he's the guy who has the man bun. That works,
yeah.
He works in the back. And
that
so
guy.
he's got the man bun, and he's been in a few different bands, and I can never quite remember which band he's in, but like
Condition Unknown.
Yep, exactly. When the festival season hits in the springtime, he's got like a brand new band. So next time you see Robert, make sure you ask him about which band is he in now. Because
he's one of those guys that plays in bands that are never around long enough to even have a legitimate name. They don't have it. It's just like, yeah, our band's name is Band. Like, we have a band, but they have no name. Yeah. But Condition Unknown could fulfill that.
Condition Unknown.
And then you could also, I can see the concerned nonprofit employee, nonprofit subordinate that you meet too, and she's just like, it's so great to meet you, Condition Unknown. Can I ask what that is, please? And you just like, so Condition Unknown is a charity that I want to start. It's for children that are suffering from conditions that are in essence ubiquitously unknown. Oh my God, that's so what I mean. Boom. See, so Condition Unknown, you can take it any direction that you need to just get some leverage with the chicks and piss off your doctor and HMO. And I love Condition Unknown. In fact, I'm almost thinking we should open a coffee shop directly across the street from Existence Brewing called Condition Unknown, or it could be a free clinic or something like that. Well, what's that anymore? It could be a clinic, free clinic. Not even the free clinic is free.
Do you ever find it odd when you walk in or when the doctor walks in the room, the exam room, and he's always like, or she, and they're like, so why are we seeing you today?
Oh, that's so condescending. Yeah. Not so. What brings you in today? Or how can we help you today? Yeah. It's just like, so why are we here today?
So what brings us to the table?
It's kind of like the teacher. I don't remember his name, but from Beavis and Butthead. Okay, so why are we here today? Okay, are you okay? Okay?
Yeah, I love that.
Like, no.
Well, then you can just go like this, and you can just go, I'm here because of the shirts. The shirt has brought me in today. And then I believe they would probably usher you to the third floor where they would introduce you to your new friends and roommates in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
He wouldn't be the doctor, actually. He'd probably be the HR person or the media person that would come out to the waiting room before you were ever seen and go, yeah, okay, I couldn't help but notice that you're wearing a sweatshirt that says Condition Unknown, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's like really reflecting badly on the doctors and other physicians and professionals we have here, okay? So it makes it look like your condition is unknown to us, which of course isn't true because we can diagnose anything, okay? So we're going to have you take that off. It's very warm in here anyway, okay? Yeah, I can hear it all now.
You kind of sound like Robert.
Well, Robert, if it's Robert and I are going to have the who sounds the most like Robert showdown, Robert or me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. What was that thing you were telling me about the other day? I went over to your place. You were fixing some records for me. You have this nifty, like you got it from Roswell. It fixes warped records.
It does.
This is amazing. Like this is what he got for his probing session. The aliens handed him this thing.
It's alien technology.
Warped records. So where some people just get a good anal like greasing and then they leave and they don't leave anything behind at all. Or it's just like a couple of carbon fibers or something. You actually got this. It's like you told me, it's like a bag. It looks like a pizza delivery bag, but it's smaller. And you put the record in there and then it heats up. And so you've been fixing a couple of my warp jobs. But when I was over there, you told me about something. And now I'm not remembering what it was. But you said, we got to bring that up at EB the next time. And so here we are.
I don't even remember. That's how quick it is just, it's like, it goes into the ether.
No, what was that? What was the thing you said at the outset? We were going to segue into the next thing.
Fear and greed?
Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, the fear and greed index. I was telling you about that.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it was. The fear and greed index.
Yeah. No, so, I've got your attention, don't I? Condition unknown.
Oh, my God. So in a world where there's an indice for everything, now we have the fear and greed index?
Yeah, the fear and greed index. And I really do think that maybe this is something that we need to give one of these. Because in case you didn't know, the fear and greed index right now is at a -9. So if
that's bad or that's good.
Oh, that's bad. That is so bad. -9. Yeah, no, if you were walking around today and you were enjoying your lunch break and maybe somebody kind of looked at you the wrong way, or you noticed that you almost got hit by a car when you were trying to save a fledgling pigeon from his demise, or things that Jack does on his lunch break. You would probably know now that something was just kind of amiss today. Like the stars were not aligned. And I would say it's probably because the fear and greed index is at a 9 today, which is extreme fear.
So explain to me who started and how we track the fear and greed index. Do you know did you read all the parts and pieces of this, or did you just kind of see it in passing?
Well, see, I'm looking at the website right now, and the wonderful people at CNN.com, they don't really expect you to know how to read. They just want you to absorb the information. So there's not a whole lot of texts that would kind of give you a construct into why this is important or why this is front and center on their website. But essentially, it's a useful look at the stock market, and they've tried to kind of do some modeling to get an idea of maybe how stocks are performing and how they might perform in the future. And of course, the first time I saw this was right after our Commander-in-Chief paused the tariffs for, was it 70 countries? I didn't even realize there were that many countries in the world. How many countries are there?
There's 193 recognized states by the United Nations. Yeah, so there's about 29 disputed territories. So everything from Kosovo to Western Sahara that the UN doesn't recognize, that there's still some kind of embattlement going on about, or some kind of consternation about, we own this. There'll be two parties usually say, we own this. No, we do. And then that's kind of disputed territory is what it's called. Or there's civil unrest.
Jack gets the correct sound effect for that one. Because I knew.
Yeah, God, that scared the hell out of me. I thought that
it's like a doorbell?
I thought that was my pacemaker going off. I don't even have one. It's
yeah, for sure. No, this is the sound that it makes when your pacemaker.
Boucher audio.
No, that's it for sure. All right, so I'm looking, before we move forward real quickly, I'm looking at the fear and greed index meter.com, feargreedmeter.com. And just real quickly, it says the fear and greed index is a way to gauge stock market movements and whether stocks are fairly priced. It's very brief description. And then there's, of course, they love their boards with all of their numbers and their percentages and their arrows going up and down and sideways and up their ass and that whole thing. So there's all that. But that in essence, this is a stock market thing. This is not a general miasma that's looming over a nation, a world, whatever.
I mean, with the news,
not for me anyway.
Well, yeah,
I don't invest in the markets.
In the last 24 hours, you probably would have expected, because of the coverage that this has received, that our whole world revolved around what happens on Wall Street. And that this index would be the determining factor of whether or not we were able to even just wake up today. And so I love the game show needle that they have: extreme fear, fear, neutral. Now, if you're at neutral, what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah, we're at an 8 right now. Apparently, it appears By the way, the gauge looks like a speedometer or kind of an inverse coolant meter in your vehicle for your radiator.
Right. It looks like a radiator meter.
Because as is typical in the world of all dashboard organizings, the extreme good things are always on the left. Isn't that interesting? When things are calm and placid and you don't need to worry about them, the needle is always pointing at the left. And as, of course, your radiator heats up because you didn't put enough water in it or the press stone is failing and you're driving up Mount Everest on a hot summer day and it's 105 degrees off the asphalt, as the car heats up, it goes further and further to the right to indicate problems. That's the way like every warning meter or gauge seems to be in a vehicle. But the fear and greed index is the reverse of that. The red is on the left and the green is on the right. And it appears that the meter goes to 10 in both directions. And then there is a patch of yellow neutral that's at the apex of this arch.
At 12 o'clock noon.
At 12 o'clock. And so you're 9 o'clock up to about 8. Well, up to about, I guess, then it'd be 10:30 or
10:30-ish.
So. Red.
Yeah.
And then it's orange from there to midnight. And then you've got high noon is yellow. And then on the other side, you've got this spring green. And then this like, well, I guess it's kind of a chartreuse. And then the spring green is like the happy time. So anyway, it's colorful. It's wonderful. The fear and greed index.
So yeah, anyway, the thing that brought my attention to this was, wow, I mean, this is, a prominent news organization in the US and it was front and center, like almost, do you remember when Homeland Security rolled out that terror index?
Yeah. When they still have it, but they tempered it. They did something with it to tweak it some time ago. Yes.
Yeah. And so it kind of reminded me of that, where like, you kind of get an idea of, what kind of heightened security are we at now? But no, this is called the greed index. And I guess
the fear and greed index.
The fear and greed index. And I guess it's supposed to be some kind of an indication for all of us on how we're supposed to live our lives. And it really kind of got me thinking about a study that I had read a long time ago. And this isn't actually even the study, but how a lot of times when you're consuming negative information constantly, and I think we've talked on this podcast before about the test that was done with crystals and how playing, certain types of music really kind of affected the development of crystals or even like the biology of plants for that matter.
Plants are different.
And so there's actually a study, and it was done by the American Psychological Association, that talks about media overload and how it's hurting our mental health. And I think that we've also discussed previously on how, just kind of our ability to live in a world where, we've got all of this information constantly at our fingertips. I think sometimes it's important for us to just kind of step back a little bit and just kind of step out of that in a world and the fear and greed index and realize that, maybe these things really aren't good for us in a 24/7 mindset. And we need to kind of realize that, there are things that are going to continue to rotate and gravity is going to continue to take over and the world is going to continue to turn and the sands through the hourglass are going to continue to fall. And it doesn't really matter who's in the White House. It doesn't really matter what the fear and greed index is. See, this is all new to me. I just don't know. And I think it's just important to realize that, these times of high stress are times to really just kind of maybe unplug and look for other outlets of information. Not to say that you would, go full loincloth and decide that you need to, move to the remote woods of Maine. But I really think that, there's kind of a time now in our economy and in our political And I discovered this, I think, for the first time, and this is when the study was done, was during COVID. And I don't know, I mean, you remember that time. It was a kind of a strange time for everyone in their lives, the isolation. And I think it's sometimes just kind of with all this tariff talk and whatever is going on, sometimes it's important to just go, you know what? Yeah, these are important topics, but, you know, maybe I need to just step away from consuming this news and information so much. I think it's hard to do sometimes.
So quickly on the note, you brought up COVID. COVID, I think, was a great, I don't know if it was planned or not, but it was a great time to meter exactly, or to gauge exactly how insubordinate all of us are as citizens of one guard, government, or nation. They had a very high time testing the waters with, okay, we're going to roll out a mask mandate. But of course, there's not going to really be any penalties for not wearing your mask. There's just going to be the public ridicule and shame that comes when there's everybody wearing their mask in one place and you happen to decide not to don yours, if you even have one at all, or at least one that doesn't say "Don't tread on me" or "Meet my Florida" or something with Floribama Shores or something.
And your name
like
happens to be Don.
Well, I got to admit, I wasn't a big fan of masking either, because I wasn't sure exactly how much good it was going to do from a pragmatic medical stance, from an actual public health stance. But anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. We're in another one right now.
Yeah.
You brought up the pandemic, and it was a very interesting, I think they definitely got their statistics about, okay, this is the number of people that when we told them to do something, absolutely just fell in line and did it. And here were the holdouts, and here were the extreme outliers, and those are the people we really need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, do you really think they're that analytical, though?
Well, I think the Fear and Greed Index proves that they are that analytical, because we are. And they love their color by numbers, oh shit meters. Remember this terror indicator thing, and then the Fear and Greed Index, and there's a bunch of other ones that have come out since the DEF CON era began. And that's the first real color by numbers numerical scale that we had to indicate how the world should be feeling. DEF CON, of course, in case you don't know, stands for Defense Condition. It's one of those great shortened or truncated portmanteaus that the federal government's military institutions love to come up with. Well, it's our current defense condition, but we'll call it DEF CON. DEF CON, because it's just so, they love that. And of course, the movie War Games is where I think a lot of people, including myself, learned about the DEF CON system, the DEF CON meter. It'd been around for much longer than that. It was a Cold War advent to indicate how great the likelihood of global thermonuclear war was at any given time based on various conditions. And generally throughout the years, DEF CON was always at 5 or maybe a 4. If there was a schism or an incursion somewhere in the world that made one of the nations that aligned with it that had nukes shuffle them to another location, or there was enough satellite mapping to indicate that this may be going on here or there, they'd lower it from 5 to 4. But generally it toggled back and forth between 5 and 4, and usually was just on a 5, which means peace, as Mr. McKittrick from War Games told
by the way,
David Lightman.
If the people in the audience have never seen that movie War Games, press pause.
The original.
Yes, press pause right now and just go grab it. It is a wonderful film.
Yeah, it's done really well, especially for its time. And that was back when Hollywood would allow you to make a movie that was anti-war or anti-government or anti-establishment or anti-military. Now, good fucking luck. We got Top Gun again, which is just wonderful. So that went like way back. Of course, during the Bay of Pigs invasion, when we were on the brink, I'm honestly not sure historically if we had the DEF CON system. I'm pretty sure we did, and I'm pretty sure that it was at a 2, that we were literally on the brink of nuclear war globally, because that was a big deal, because Mr. Kennedy was not backing down, and Mr. Khrushchev didn't appear to be. And then there was some handshake made in the dark in some underground Dr. Evil place overnight. And suddenly we agreed to release these hostages and provide Redskins season tickets and 1,000 turkeys for everybody in the Kremlin for Thanksgiving. And everybody was happy. So one of those deals defused the whole thing. They told us publicly a different story about what was actually traded for peace to prevail, but there's always other stuff under the table that gets exchanged. So anyway, we love ways to gauge and meter all kinds of things. We're just in love with that, and we love to track them and that sort of thing. The thing I think we have to remember the most about all of this is kind of what you're alluding to, and I would take it just a step further maybe and really underscore it by saying that it's all bullshit. It's all fictitious. I mean, oranges still grow on trees. Wheat still grows in a field. If you plant a seed, it's still going to sprout an apple more than likely. I mean, we have enough food to feed a lot of fucking people. We have enough love that can be conducted to care for each other for all eternity. The stock market is a made-up, fictitious bunch of bullshit. It's about leveraging every commodity possible and then playing a big game of Monopoly with it. And it has nothing to do with why anybody should truly be afraid, but it certainly has everything to do with how greedy one person or another or certain factions of people or another are. So I prefer the greed index, but I would just call the whole fucking thing the greed index. I would call the Dow Industrial Average the greed industrial average. I would call the NASDAQ the greed DAC. I would call it all by what it really is. It's all about greed. It's all about leveraging what people need in order to biologically remain vital and thrive while within this experience. And that may be putting it in a context that makes it sound fancier. It's like, oh, Jack speak again. But think about it. It really is true. And if you got rid of the stock market tomorrow, what would really happen? I mean, if the market crashes, the market crashes. But if you truly removed all of the barriers that it places in front of us to be able to just live our lives here, living's difficult enough. We got to look out for giant asteroids and, vicious predators and mosquitoes that are carrying malaria. And, we got enough problems not to be on each other's backs with greed and fear. So if you ask me, the fear and greed index in general, just in ubiquity, is off the charts, and it has been for decades now. But that's all within our control. The fear index may go up slightly if a large volcano goes off. If Yellowstone blows, the fear index is going to go pretty high, even without the stock market notwithstanding. The greed index is going to do absolutely nothing, potentially because people are going to be hoarding, but it won't matter. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that we're in charge of all of this at the end of the day. So right down to how much fear and how much greed we're going to put into this stock market thing. I work with a young man now who's 27, great guy, but he's still learning in a lot of ways about the reality of certain things. And I'm not talking about the pragmatic reality of living in the real world, because it's not the real world. It's bullshit. It's made up because it is aligned with and influenced by heavily the fear and greed index that the stock market bears on the world, or bulls on the world, depending on the day, right? But what really matters is that he and I are here, and we both have the ability to help each other see ourselves through this experience. It's whether we choose to do that or not. And he loves to follow where his investments are with his retirement plan, because he's got a retirement plan from a former job. And so he's been looking at those all week. And the last couple of weeks here, as this tariff bullshit has been making those erratically vacillate from one side of the meter to the other. Oh, God, I'm up this much today. Oh, I'm down that much. You're not up or down anything at all, dude. I mean, if you cashed it out today, there'd be a certain number of beans in your pocket more than not, but they're not really beans. You can't plant them to grow something to eat to sustain you. It's paper money at best at the end of the day, and it only goes so far to sustain your existence here. And until all of this is blown up and we learn better, we're going to have a fear and greed index, and we're going to need it.
Yeah, and that's the kind of where I was going with this. Is it's like, at what point do you need an index to tell you what your condition is, right? I mean, do you really need something to remind you about whether or not, something is is up or down, or indexes, as a whole just kind of seem ridiculous.
Okay, so the Doomsday Clock is kind of similar. It's a little bit different, but the Doomsday Clock is this device that was put into effect, for lack of a better term. It was instituted by some scientists that weigh a number of different factors, and it's all about how close we are to the brink of a human-caused disaster of global proportions. And it's largely based on war. It's largely based on war and the presence of global thermonuclear weapons that are around the world. That's really what kind of kicked it off post-Cold War era. But it does have other influencing agents. And it's really interesting. I'm wondering to myself, I'm sure I have a copy of it here in my own personal files, but I'm wondering if the people that I work for didn't see it fit to take that down, actually, which I always wonder about. But I still have a copy of it nonetheless, and I can read it from my own. Here it is. And I can read it from my own files here. But I wrote a little piece about the Doomsday Clock. The Doomsday Clock has ticked now to its closest point to midnight that it has ever been at since being invented. And in skimming just my piece here, it was, as I put here, the clock was originally set at 7 minutes to midnight when it was emblematically plugged in 77 years ago. It's been moved backwards 8 times and forward 18 since then. Oddly enough, the furthest it has ever been from the cataclysmic chime of midnight was in the year I graduated from high school, which was 1991, when it was 17 minutes away. That shift was largely thanks to the fall of the Soviet Union and the perceivable end to the radioactive pissing contest we once called the arms race. Now, 34 years later, after I donned a trencher and tassel to celebrate my separation from forcible institutionalization by the state, as I say in the story, the clock sits at 89 seconds away from its most perilous peal, which is the closest it's ever been. And again, this is all based on activities related to climate change now, because again, when the clock was originally plugged in, it was all about we're going to war and we have these weapons of mass destruction that can, really do a number on the whole of humanity. That's still a factor, but now it's more about climate change and about how rapidly that's getting away from us. So the Doomsday Clock is another instrument that we've invented to make ourselves feel better and wonderful about being here and the good stewards that we've been of the earth, because it's, again, last check, and they set it every year. They set it either forward or backward. The scientists do this. So it'll stay at 89 seconds for the rest of this year. And that's where it's at right now, 89 seconds away from midnight. And when it hits midnight, it's game over, man. Game over. It's supposed to be not the end of the world, but it's supposed to be we literally are any second now we're going to have a global cataclysm that will occur based on the variety of factors that weigh into the clock's movements one direction or another. It's a very interesting Price is Right game that sadly never made it to the stage, but it's on the world stage. So, and I'm really starting to wonder if they didn't remove my story. Because typically whenever I bring up something like that and just put my station call letters behind it, it immediately pops up on Google. But either Google has shoved it way down in the results or they have in fact taken it down. But I have a copy of it. So
yeah, well, that story is not a good for business narrative. That's for sure.
Well, I don't think it's the story itself, because the story made headlines everywhere, and it does every year,
right?
Especially when it actually ticks backward. It's what I had to say about it that I think was the problem. But when isn't that the problem? So it appears as though I have been amended yet again, because I have no idea why Doomsday Clock, and again, my station call letters wouldn't bring up the story, but that's okay. I'm going to get used to a world that tries to censor me. I'm already used to it.
In a world where greed and fear rule.
Oh, I stand corrected. Here it is. It just took me a minute. Google I had to get more clever with my. So my article was published in February of this year. It's called Doomsday Clock, closer to midnight than ever before, but do we really care? And we can run through it if we have time. It's not super long. I mean, but anyway, so there's that instrument too for us to feel better about as we look at all these meters and things.
Well, and you're right. It does have a very
we gotta
much
just keep our eyes on the real price.
And you're right. It does have a Plinko Price is Right look to it, the Doomsday Clock. I would have thought maybe something like the Doomsday Clock would have been a little more ominous, but it looks very game show-ish. Which one of those guys in the press release picture do you think takes that thing home? I bet the guy on the left.
It honestly, to me, has always looked like a prop from CBS News studios in New York in the 60s. It looks like something you'd see on their wall behind them.
Oh, 100%.
Like the clock with the world on it.
Like 60 Minutes or something.
I am glad to know. Here's the thing about my company. Nobody probably read the damn thing. So, but anyway, so, I mean, all that stuff, like what, and as far as getting lost in it, yeah, I mean, absolutely. We can certainly get lost in the maelstrom and the coil of negativity and the coil of doomsaying and fear-mongering and all this sort of thing. It's about what what you put out is what you get back. I mean, that's kind of an energetic law, too. There's another one that just goes back to science that I think holds true for the world of energetic spirit, just the same, and that's coming from someone who can be quite pessimistic and who is definitely very caustic about how he relays some of his feelings about things, but it doesn't mean that I'm entirely negative. I mean, I don't feel like we are at a point, quite honestly, where, those people that are just cloyingly positive. I mean, it's just syrupy, stickily sweet, just everything. They haven't a bad or critical thing to say about anything. I don't think our world is ready for those people. And I wonder if we'll ever have a world that's ready for those people. I mean, you've got to have a little bit of an edge, I think, if you're going to live in a world that is giving that much of one back to you. If life is going to place you on a razor's edge constantly, this far away from being your head cut off, you'd better be prepared to be caustic enough to cut back. It doesn't mean that you're not a kind person and that you're not a good, loving person, but it means that you have the ability to balance both and know when it's time to fucking destroy somebody with words and words only to get your point across. And that's where I think my stance comes from, of course. I worry about people that just don't ever want to say anything. I envy them in some ways because I wonder, how did you get like that?
Who created you?
Is this the effect of watching The Sound of Music repeatedly, like every day from the time you're 3 or 4 years old until you're like out of high school? Or what happened to you exactly?
Well, and I can hear somebody in the audience already saying, well, Michael, Wall Street is an important thing. If you didn't already know that, then you might as well just kiss the mortgage goodbye that you live in. Well, I mean, I understand the importance of financial institutions in our society. And I understand that we're all held to different clocks. And that, at the end of the day, really the greed and fear index is not going to affect how I see myself in this world. And it's not going to affect how I see others in this world. And realistically, I think it's just a mind control thing.
Well, let's just put it in the simplest of terms possible so that there's no mistaking what exactly we're measuring here. If you're going to go to sleep tonight and you're on the street and you have no food and you have no idea when or where your next meal is going to come to you, your fear index is probably a little high, if not off the fucking charts. Your greed index is non-existent because all you're looking for is the most basic of items to be able to get through another day or another evening. If you're on the hill and you're behind the gated walls and you're living with the Dave Ramseys and the Donald Trumps of the world I'll pick 2 for you of many, then your fear index is probably very fucking low, unless all you're afraid of is losing a few more of your millions.
Or is
your greed index? Your greed index is constantly redlining.
Yeah,
constantly
but
redlining.
I would say though that like the fear and greed index has a greater impact on those people up on the hill than it does the guy sleeping under the bridge.
I would agree with you, because those people that created the game and live by the game also die by the game, and they're serious about it. So you're right. The person that is the pauper who's on the street and who's begging for his next meal is much closer to the reality of existence than those who've lavished themselves in illusion. However, it still doesn't translate to a hot meal. And that's one of the problems that we have with the equation. If it were fair and balanced based on just the basic requirements, I'm talking the basic requirements: food, clean water, and the ability to survive the elements when they become their most ferocious.
Shelter, yeah.
I don't even want to say like constant shelter. Just can I go inside when it's raining and I'm going to get pneumonia? Can I go inside when there's a flash flood coming? Can I go inside when there's a tornado warning? I'm not even talking about constant housing. We can do this Gilligan's Island style if we have to with the housing. But those are basic things that are supposed to be afforded to us to at least seek for ourselves within this experience. Again, drop somebody on Gilligan's Island and see what they do. You ever watch Castaway? It's the first thing that he does. He's trying to figure out how to eat. He's trying to figure out how to get clean water. And he's trying to figure out where he can shelter from the goddamn tropical storms that are blowing through every other day. They're basic things, and they're leveraged by the folks that live on the hill, leveraged to the hilt in that game. And so this is where we have the problem. Stop leveraging our food, leave our fucking water alone, and give everybody the opportunity to at least share in a dwelling together where they could be safe and under the elements. And then we'll talk about you setting up your game and playing the rest of the way. But it's gone too far. You've leveraged too much, and that's the problem. And that's where the mad as hell and not going to take it anymore is spilling over, and the pitchforks and torches will come out. People are setting Teslas on fire. The Molotov cocktails are out, folks, and this has been a long time coming, and they're not going to stop from here because we have problems. And rather than address them like real souls that have the capacity for advancement in a progressive manner energetically, we're going to worry about the fear and greed index today. So, and on that point, we promised folks that we were going to get into this last week. And so I think it's a great jumping off point for us, because we're talking about perception is what we're really talking about here. Because when we have fictitious numbers on a fictitious board, Wall Street, or, running across a ticker somewhere in, the backwoods of New Jersey, and, somebody's watching their stock market tick across, that's all illusory. None of that's real. But of course, the impacts that we decide it has on the world, because think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, if the stock market crashes, or if one commodity on the stock market crashes, and it literally comes down to someone going out onto the docks where there's thousands of children standing, waiting to get corn or soybeans or whatever it is going to feed them tonight. And they say, sorry, kiddos, bunch of zeros and ones on the whole bird over there just crashed like a son of a bitch. And so none of you's all eating tonight. Okay, that's a human decision that's being made in an asinine fashion because you're following the directive of lunacy. You're following the direction of an illusory game, and you're hurting people as a result of it, where the right thing to do is say, fuck the stock market and all the numbers and everything that goes along with it. If you want to make it that complicated, you go play that game somewhere else. Tonight, this isn't going to just sit around or rot or not do anybody any good because somebody wants to leverage it more than it was able to be leveraged today on some board. We're not playing that game. Everybody eats.
And I kind of feel like it goes back to a basic element of human existence, too. I think humans are really good at creating ways to measure things. You know, we've created clocks to measure time. We've created indexes to measure fear and greed and whatever.
Which also isn't real.
You know, we've created these things to measure all of these items. And where in nature does measurements occur? It doesn't.
No, there's really nothing else that measures anything the way that we do, but we love our science and our systems, and you know, it's part of our analytical mind. And I don't mind measuring some things. I mean, I'm more of a pinch of this and a dash of that guy when I cook, but every so often, if you really need to get the ratios right, you know, I don't mind a cup of flour, a half cup of sugar, a tablespoon of, you know, vinegar. That's fine. But on the fronts of how much we measure fear and greed, I think it's getting, you know, we're way off base and out into the weeds. But again, I think that comes back to perception. And I've been sitting on this for months. So let's just spit the quote out here so we can do what we're going to do with it. It's actually from Imelda Marcos. And Imelda Marcos, in case you don't know, was a very high-ranking politician in the Philippines. She was actually, a lot of people said that the Marcoses were dictatorial, that they were, you know, kind of had a dictatorship going in the Philippines for a while. There was a very iron hand government. So all that, be what that as it may, it's a very powerful politician, had a lot of sway with a lot of very high-ranking people, officials, and certainly had a silver tongue when it came to her constituents and those who were responsible for getting her and her husband into office when they were over there. And I want to say that was the 80s and 90s when that was the case. But Imelda Marcos, of all people, said something that was astonishingly philosophical. And it was something that she had learned to master and manipulate through her years of being in the position that she was. And what she said, and this was after she was out of power, I believe she said this in an interview with the news media. But her quote, it's very short and it's very poignant. And she said, "Perception is real. The truth is not." And when you think about that, you kind of have to maybe at first let some more digestive juices lay on top of it before it wears off the surface. But what she's talking about is how truly perception runs our world. The perception that our president, whoever it might be, doesn't matter whether it's this one, the last one, or 15 ago, the perception that that person is doing this or doing that or doing a good job or is this kind of person or that kind of person. The perception that what I saw on TV is actually what's going on. The perception that what the government is telling me is exactly what's happening. It's the truth. But she's unlinking them. She's telling you, look, there is a major difference between perception and truth, aka reality. And what she's saying is that perception rules the roost. Perception wins the day when it comes to governing the masses, or really when it comes to taming or influencing anyone. The perception of me and the perception of you by our followers, for example, or for, you know, our, I hate that word followers because it makes it sound so culty, but by the people that would listen to our podcast, the perception of the people we are is going to win out over the reality of the people that we are. Now, we try to be as real as possible, and I can guarantee you I'm not putting on a show. There's nothing that I haven't said that I don't truly believe myself, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a perception, a membrane of perception around me that's still stronger than the actual hard truth. So it's inescapable that the perception of the people is going to sadly win out over the truth, because the truth gets lost so often in interpretation. And it definitely gets purposefully and willfully buried under what it is that people want to spin and make out of the truth. So I thought that was an interesting quote for sure. There's more to this. There's another side to it, but I'm anxious to get your thoughts on perception is real, truth is not.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that was this after the Beatles refused to visit with her? during their tour to the Philippines?
I want to say that may have been, was that Imelda Marcos? I mean,
it was.
Okay. Yeah, I think this was after she had been subjugated from power. This was
yes, this would have been far after. This was
after that.
I just thought it was funny because that was the first time the first thing that came into my mind was when the Beatles were held in the Philippines because they refused to meet with Imelda Marcos. No, I think that's very true. Perception is reality.
I think if you look at the media and you look at the tricks that have been spun on all of us, and again, you can bring in your conspiracy theories heavy in this argument as well.
I think we have a tendency to gravitate towards those perceptions too. I think that it's easy for our brains to go, oh, okay, yeah, this is this and that is that, and so therefore I feel this way. And so I think, when you use, say, someone like O.J. Simpson as an example, for so many years he was looked at as maybe, say, someone who was like the pinnacle of success, and how quickly that whole trial really kind of started to peel away the layers of the onion of the reality, which was that he was a very angry person. He had difficulty dealing with emotions. He had, probably some psychological issues. And, he was involved in one of the most horrific things. And when he died last year, we even talked about how, the sad thing about all of this is that, there were two people who lost their life. There was never a resolution to any of it. There was never a killer that was found. There was never it was just kind of like, oh, it just went away. And, but I think that like in our minds, we like to go, oh yeah, this person is this and that person is that. And so it's kind of like fast food for our brains. It doesn't require a whole lot of thought. And so then, just like the time or whatever, it just allows us to kind of just go with the flow and stay within our box of how we organize the patch quilt of life.
Well, and so the human outcome of the OJ trial, for example, and everything that came after it could be very frustrating and could make people very hangdog. They could get very gloomy about the fact that there's no justice there. But you just said there's no resolution to it. In human terms, there's no resolution to it. I mean, there was, he was acquitted, but the perception, again, is that there's no resolution to it that's satisfactory to, the general population.
Again, the scales of justice.
Paying attention to this. Right. But karmically, there's a resolution to it. And this is where I'm driving with this. So if you're at all disturbed by the fact and feel like perception is unavoidable, this whole thing with perception always overlapping and overarching truth and shadowing the truth, because so often that's what we say we're trying to get to the bottom of, and that's what's going to set us free, the truth, right? Because the truth can't be changed. The truth, in all realistic terms, is exactly what impacts the world. The truth is he was hit by a train and he's dead. Now maybe his spirit is walking the tracks and he's talking to you every night, but the truth is he's dead and he's not coming back. That's what you'd say to somebody that's convinced that their son who was hit by the train is still around. Or, the truth is that we saw his body, he's dead. Now, doesn't mean that there's not a lot of different layers to it, but it means that the person, the body that he occupied has suffered traumatic injuries and is gone. It's not coming back, not in the same form, right? So that's the truth. So there's the truth that's at the anchor point of all this. It's what we're always trying to get to. We always say the truth will set you free, but it's so hard to get to because it's enshrouded by this notion of perception. But I just want to point out that there's another side to this thing that Imelda Marcos said, where she's just saying, we're hopelessly lost to perception, and people will always do the will of whoever's governing them because they're always going to just get lost in that illusion. The truth is still the ruler of all of this at the end of the day. And the grand equalizer here is what I would refer to as karma, or what I would refer to as, that which truly keeps track of all of these things that happen. The good, perceivably the bad. It's all equilibrated by that force that we would call whatever you want to call it, source, God, universe, call it what you want. That's the grand equalizer in all of this that's always been around, but is unseen. So in human terms, yes, perception may in fact be the ruler of all. But the truth is always being judged. It's always being looked at. It's always being, the weights and measures of that are always going up and down based on karma, based on this instrument that's unseen, that's unknown to us, that truly balances those things out at the end of the day. So I would just wanted to offer for people that maybe had read a lot of, because this kind of goes along with stuff that Noam Chomsky has written, and the super hyper realists of the world that basically are the ones that come out and say, look, we're trashing the perception. Here is the truth about all this stuff, and it makes you angry, and you just feel like it's inescapable. Like, my God, you had no idea these things were really going on, or you had no idea you were truly being lied to about this, or was never told that. A lot of people, when I say, McDonald's in the rainforest, McDonald's going to come out and probably deny it too, as much as they can, because they're not showing you pictures of the cattle they're raising on all the Amazon rainforest that they've cut down. But a lot of people instantly feel guilty. It's just like, well, I had no idea they did that. And I've eaten them, 1,000 Big Macs over the years. And, gosh, I feel horrible now. And it's just like, well, look, you couldn't know any better. But that truth of what actually happened, the people that actually greenlit going in and destroying all of those creatures and all of those trees for the sake of greed, and here goes the meter again, something's keeping up with them. And that's where that notion of a God that's judging us constantly, that kind of got a negative spin, I think comes into play in a very real sense, because there is something, trust me, that's keeping track of all of these things. But karma doesn't always work instantaneously. Just because someone does something that's wronging another person doesn't mean it's going to come back on them instantly. In this particular experience, it could wait many experiences before it shows up again. But you should keep your karma clean. And, it's kind of like keeping your bills paid, I guess, to avoid going to collections. You don't want to go to collections with the universe. You should keep your karma as clean as you can. We all build it from time to time. It's unavoidable in some ways, but just, wanted to throw that out there. Been meaning to talk about it for a while, because I thought I've always really appreciated that quote, because it's very honest in a real world way. But once you hear it and understand what its implications are, that Imelda Marcos was saying, you can walk away feeling very defeated. You can walk away feeling, gosh, what can I do? We're just doomed. And we're not, because we do have that grand equalizer keeping track of the truth, because the truth never gets lost, and it's always accounted for in one way, shape, or form. But again, don't expect just because some creep murders 4 teenagers in a van by the lake over the weekend that lightning's going to hit him the same night. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it does, but very often it doesn't. But that's where that whole God works in mysterious ways things comes in, because it's not for you to worry about how it gets sorted out. You sort out the human things. You clean up the mess. You try to find the perpetrator. You put him in jail. You put him on trial. You go through your human games, and you just let the universe figure the rest of it out, because it's always working.
Well, and the Tao Te Ching says that human perspective, only one absolute truth can be defined or embraced by a person. So whose truth is it?
Yeah, well, there's the old saying, there's 3 sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. So, yeah, even the most subjective person is probably going to lean one way or another on most things. It's the only way that I think true neutrality enters the frame for the human experience is if someone's just completely insouciant to something. They don't care. It's just like, I don't care about that. So my neutrality comes from a place of insouciance. I don't give a shit about it. But if you're fired up about something, well, it's hard for you to not lean one direction or another. So just something to think about, which is always good. Something to think about that's better than, oh my God, I don't know.
You know what I say?
A million things.
You know what I say to the fear and greed index?
What?
That's what I say.
That's the strike noise from Family Feud. So I'm waiting for Richard Dawson. I love Richard Dawson, by the way. He's hero is a strong word, and I'm not sure anybody probably should be. I'm not sure Richard Dawson should be anybody's hero, but I really did like Richard Dawson. I know he was smarmy as all get out, but he was sharp sense of humor, man.
Wasn't he the game show host that would kiss all of the women?
Yeah, he was the mononucleosis game show host to end all mononucleosis game show host.
He was the creator of the Me Too movement, wasn't he?
Yeah, I know. Again, everybody would, oh, Jack, how can you like him? He's so creepy, and he kissed all the women. It's like, yeah, he's a sharp guy. He was funny. Hollywood was more honest in the 70s because they came right out and showed you. Now we have to learn about Pizzagate 20 years after it's fucking been going on, and we've lost 500 kids to it or whatever, I mean, back then, it's pretty easy to see.
That was Richard Dawson's truth, wasn't it?
I don't think Richard Dawson was ever, I'm pretty sure he was never guilty of sexually assaulting anybody. He met one of his wives on the show. She was a contestant.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they had just a real spark. They had a super connection, and I believe they were married until he died. It was a while ago that he passed away, but I'm pretty sure he was still with her. So
that's what the owners count on. The fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
I'm ahead of overthinking, hanging to a thinning thread. I've been searching in the rubble for the pieces of a dream I still have.
Oh, I'm so glad I brought my lighter today so I could light a candle.
That's my boy, Michael Oakley. And, of course, George the Great on the front side there.
Oh, George. All right, Jack, until we meet again.
Okay, soon, that is.
Keep your eye on the index.
Whoa, American dream, blinded by the city lights shining on me. Whoa, American dream, you're everything I wanted and all I want to see. With all these things I see in my American dream.
And now, distinguished guests and graduates of the class of 2025. We'd like to welcome to the podium Jack Hansen from the award-winning podcast Existence Brewing.
I'm a huge fan! Yeah!
In case you hadn't heard, and not that you didn't already suspect it, human beings are closer to wiping themselves off the face of the earth and out of existence altogether than ever before. That's the official prognosis, at least, from the eggheads at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, who operate what they call the Doomsday Clock. According to the Bulletin, the clock is a symbol that represents the estimated likelihood of a human-made global catastrophe based on the current state of the world and a litany of other assorted variables. The clock has been maintained since 1947, and is a metaphor, not a running prediction, which quantifies a variety of threats to humanity's continuation from unchecked scientific and technological advances. The position of the clock is not an indicator of actual time, mind you, not that there is such a thing anyway, but rather a marker for how close humanity is to a global apocalypse, with midnight representing the cuckooing crescendo of its invisible fuse. The clockmakers at the Bulletin assess the state of the world based on their litmuses for total destruction every time we make it to another January without annihilating ourselves, and move the hands of the device accordingly by virtue of developments over the previous year which cause them to either be turned back or pushed ahead. Think of it like an exercise in the annual switch to daylight saving time using the likelihood of detonating nukes and global killing asteroids instead of saving electricity and being late for work as the reasons for doing so. The primary factors that influence the clock are things like nuclear war, climate change, and artificial intelligence, but there are other items which can also make its tick speed up or slow down annually. And while it's unknown if zombies are among them, it wouldn't be a surprise to me, since Las Vegas and Walmart continue to bear out the validity of their existence on a daily basis. Now, the clock was originally set at 7 minutes to midnight when it was emblematically plugged in 77 years ago, and has been moved backwards 8 times and forward 18 times since then. Oddly enough, the furthest it ever has been from the cataclysmic chime of midnight was the year I graduated high school in 1991, when it was 17 minutes away. Now, this shift was largely thanks to the fall of the Soviet Union and the perceivable end of that radioactive pissing contest we once called the arms race. Now, some 34 years later, after I donned a trencher and tassel to celebrate my separation from forcible institutionalization by the state, the clock sits a mere 89 seconds away from its most perilous peal, which is the closest it's ever been. The brainiac timekeepers at the Bulletin note the rising hazards posed by AI, the continuing instability of global governments, and dangerous spikes in global warming and irrevocable environmental damage as the main reasons for 2025's move of the clock to near checkmate status. And they further warn that with its representative hands now sitting so perilously close to the precipice of Armageddon, even one false move on the part of humanity could force the clock to suddenly jump to its end time and turn all human beings into pumpkins who are all too ripe for the indelible squashing. To some degree, I personally feel the Doomsday Clock is a construct of complete futility. Surely we all must know, even in some subconscious way beneath the many layers of twisted tea and KY jelly we insist on remaining perpetually obscured within, that our time has been running its course ever since we showed up on this rock, and therefore will undeniably be running out until it eventually does. The overtures of repeatedly reversing and advancing the theoretical rate at which we will come to know this most certain fate might seem like a clever exercise in gauging our collective ability to achieve immortality, but in the end are no different than dyeing our already silvering hair a shade away from jet black, or getting Botox injected beneath the furrowed skin atop our omni-scowling brow. It's only delaying the inevitable and lining us with a candy coating of artificial hubris, when humility is always just below the surface, no matter how old or far gone we might be considered. But while on the one hand, I do feel like the Doomsday Clock is similar to a Rolex with an after-lifetime warranty of no real use or value, on the other, I also think it can be used as a catalyst for the contemplation of something much greater. Even if our corporealism in arms is at the mercy of one clock or another of sorts, our spirits are nothing less than blinding rays of boundless origin and potentiality, which are transcendent of any and all states and realities that are possible. And it's up to us, both as innate pieces of a never-ending universe who've been gifted with a belonging to both the notion of individuality and a family of flesh-bound experiencers, to decide just exactly how we want to shape both our present and our future, while using our past to help us in doing so. Although I'm honestly not troubled by the thought of humankind running its course via one striking of a midnight oblivion or another, and therefore don't see this clock that's being kept by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists as having anything to do with the doom that's found in its namesake, there's still no doubts that humanity's time as a physical extension of subsistence is inherently limited to one degree or another. After all, that's part of any handshake with the material plane. But just as certain as I am of this fact being unwaveringly true, I'm even more resolute in the knowledge that the energies which make up all of the things we call things within this reality, including the ones we know as ourselves, will go on and on and on, and are forever free to become and go over and over again without the slightest inclination of an ensuing conclusion. As the ultimate dictators of how we make our way to the knelling of this midnight, it is cosmically incumbent upon us to make every effort to see to it that this journey to 0-100 hours is filled with only the best that we are capable of: love, compassion, mindfulness, and so on. Because it is through the expressions of these virtuous blessings that we are truly able to live and shine on like an undying star for all eternity, no matter what form the energies that shape us should take.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own Existence Brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.